Welcome to the ITAD Talk podcast with your host, Jeff Bittner.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Michael Fencil. He's our guest this morning for ITAD Talk. And I know Michael personally. We live in the same neighborhood, and so during the COVID period, we've been going to the gym and working out, and Michael's this really skilled at weight training, and so I've gotten in a lot better shape. And during the course of getting to know him, he's been founding a business, which is seems so timely right now because I just had Craig Boswell on from Hobie International, and he was talking about one of the trends in ITAD right now is working from home, and how are you going to get all the assets out there, how are you going to get all the assets back, and how are you going to keep track of all this material that's floating kind of at everybody's houses as they work from home. So I'll go ahead and introduce Michael Fencil, and let Michael, you tell us a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about Shiftspaces.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, first, it's been very good getting to know you over the last year and a half. The timing was perfect. As Jeff said, we met in our community and at the gym more specifically, and had a great time working out with some friends and welcoming more people into that workout group, which was really good for the community as well as ourselves. And so it's been a fun time of building our friendship, and at the same time, we have gotten a chance to talk a little bit more about things beyond working out and personal lives, and talked a bit about our businesses. And as Jeff just mentioned, as we were moving from the initial few weeks and early days of COVID, and that affecting all our lives in different ways, one of the things that occurred early on was many people had moved out of their offices and the places that they typically were going to work. And of course, many of the students, if not all, had been removed from campuses and wherever they were going for grade school and otherwise, to be in the home and learning from home. And so we had this complete change, a very drastic shift in the way that we were doing life in a short period of time. And so Jeff just had mentioned a moment ago that I introduced the concept of Shiftspaces and Shift. And it was very early on in the whole process of the timing for COVID to come when it came around, that there was just a very clear vision that I was given to create what we're doing today. And so our focus is helping people to maintain a level of productivity, efficiency, comfort, and cultural engagement, so many other things within their home or wherever it is that they call home, whatever type of living space and environment that is. And so what we're focusing on there is giving people all the things that they need, equipping them with all the tools, the technology, the furniture, the privacy that's needed. And so, as I mentioned to Jeff leading into this call, we'll do some things where we'll go kind of stay high level and maybe at points get a little bit deeper with things. But our focus is people. And our heart as a company is to serve people and to do that well. We know that a lot of people were really displaced, and that there was a lot of discomfort that went along with that, and a lot of discouragement and troubles and trials and trying to figure out how to make it work. And we have to look at the other side of it too, which was for leaders within companies and schools. And hey, how do we do this? And it wasn't intentional on their parts that this would all come about, but trying to understand what the path looks like to making sure people are safe, that they have the things that they need to work effectively or learn effectively. Those were questions that were being asked then, and they're still being asked today. So our principal focus is equipping the world for work and learning from anywhere, and especially remote solutions that are part of our Shiftspace packages.
Okay. And so kind of just give us a little bit of insight on what a Shiftspace package looks like, or what might come with that.
So when we think about going into an office in the traditional sense, or going into a school, there's certain things that we're accustomed to learning with or working with. Now let's focus on working for a moment. when you go to an office, there's an expectation in most cases that companies are going to provide you with specific tools. Those would be a computer, maybe monitors. If you have the type of work you would need extra monitors. Lighting is usually something that I'll even say take for granted, because it's kind of established within the overall within the building, right? Somebody else has chosen the lighting and it seems to work pretty well for us, and enough at least for us to be able to do our work. So we don't think about that as much maybe in the office setting as we do when we're at home, when we're trying to figure out how to make sure we're well lit so that we show up well on a camera, and so that we're not too bright, or we're not too, specifically, sometimes we get too much natural light on our face if we're by a window, or we don't get enough if we're in a basement. And so there are a lot of different, I'll say ranges of color on our faces, or brightness from the lighting source that we have. And then if we think about things like our speakers or the audio that we're using, and the video quality that might come from a camera we would have on site in an office space, these things become very important for us in an office, but even more important for us at a home. We're not in the same kind of controlled environment. We're in a personal space that's now serving as a working space. We've got to figure out how to make it work. So how do you do that from your dining room table? And a lot of people will use these things anecdotally and say, I know someone who worked from a dining room table. Many people still are, or from their couch, or somebody is doing it from their bedroom, and they're working at the foot of their bed. We have pictures of all kinds of different things that we've seen in the media of people working in different ways, and even kids learning in different ways from all kinds of living spaces. And they're trying to get comfortable. They're trying to figure out where they can focus. They want to be disciplined. They want to be focused. They want to be engaged. But this has been a big transition for them to go from, I go out of my house and I go into the doors at my school, or I go into my doors at work, or my agency is, whatever that is, and I'm now in work, or I'm at school. And that transition's been difficult. So those pieces that we find that are common for us to work with in particular, we want to be able to take those and put those in the home environment in the similar kind of way, if not the same way, to create these working spaces. And so, Jeff, those specific pieces are going to be your camera, they're going to be your microphone, your speakers, they would be the keyboard and mouse, if that's not already provided. It's going to be furniture, so your desk and your chair, flooring. We have something proprietary called our shift walls. And so the focus with those is that we have something that's insulated, not isolating, sound isolating, because we're not trying to put people and place people in a space that they can't hear anything around them. We want it to be very natural. So it's still an open environment, but it's going to have some level of noise suppression, sound suppression. So when noises are passing out of the shift space into the living space, it's going to be buffered by that wall. And conversely, when it's coming from the living space into the shift space, it's going to be buffered by the wall, because there's sound absorption equipment or materials that are inside of that wall that do that. So those key pieces, along with, I believe I mentioned the monitors, the lighting, help to create and recreate what we would expect to see in an office setting. And we know that about 95% of the world, maybe even 97% of the world, they don't have a home office. So our term, the shift space, this is how we're taking any space within any living space and converting it into something that's workable, that's managed or manageable in terms of the space that it's taking up, that works for you and gives you everything that you need to perform at the highest level, to look your best on camera, to sound your best when you're speaking to people, to make sure that you have the ability to present well and what appears to you and appears to the world to be a very professional environment. And so we're able to accomplish that with Shiftspaces.
So then basically your package would include the walls, like you said, with to have the sound suppression built in, the lighting package, and the speakers, and like the monitors and the computer equipment as well. And then you would come in and just install the whole thing, or kind of tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's a good question. We know typically in the commercial and residential integration world, what happens is that when a company, let's focus specifically on commercial. So, for example, with your company, Jeff, or let's take it all the way up to a larger company, a multinational corporation. When the work is done inside of an office, it's done by trained professionals who are certified to do work with many of the manufacturers in the world. So what happens is whether a consultant designs the technology to go in to the space, that would be an audio video technology, or that audio video integration company designs the technology that's going to go in, it's an integration company that will ultimately install those things. Most companies don't have their own internal teams that do all the installations. If you think about maybe having 5,000-10,000 rooms somewhere, you don't have a team that's built up to do that. You have a team that's really there to help to facilitate some of that and make sure that you're making the right decisions about the products that are going to work well for your company, for your people. But ultimately, they rely on audio video integrators to do that work. And so that model works really well when you think about these large corporations, even small, mid-size, whatever size companies that are going to be using the services that the integrators offer. They are going on site and they're going to install those parts and pieces and make sure it's all commissioned and it's working well. Well, you have you have tens of millions of people that were moved off site instantly. Product then went into their home, right? The product that went into their home was really the laptop. But beyond that, the things that were in the office space that they would typically know as part of their working environment wasn't there. And some companies would give out, different things like a couple $100 credit that you could use, or go, buy a desk, maybe some things like that. But it was all very ad hoc, and it was all Band-Aid over this, what ended up being a much longer standing or longer term situation that companies and team members found themselves in, which is, we're not working from an office anymore. Month by month, it seemed to change. Yeah. Right.
True.
So you went from commercial integrators placing products into the office to now people at home responsible for their own equipment, and companies not having anybody who could actually help facilitate all that. As a matter of fact, there's no service built for that. And that's where Shiftspaces and Shift comes in, because we have the ability to manage that whole process. And our objective, again, is really serving people first, but that's going to happen at a company level too, and it's going to happen at the school levels with leadership, because just as much as people need help in getting the right products and pieces into their homes and having it supported, the leaders need something that's there for them, that they can rely on, a company that's there for them, that they can rely on, that's going to offer them all these parts and pieces, the whole package, and then say, hey, we can take care of this for you. We can manage it for you. We can tend to those 10,000 endpoints, no matter if they're all across the U.S. or around the world. So that's part of what is within our offering through our Shift Force.
And then you'll also be able to track all the IT assets that are in these spaces, and then come up with a circular economy or a way to take them back out.
Yeah, so one of the really important things that we acknowledge from an accounting perspective, from just thinking through mobilizing this workforce out in the field now. You used to be able to do it in this very concentrated way. It's hey, everybody's in our office. We can control the products coming in. We can control the products. They're not going out as much, right? They're coming in, and then people are using them. And maybe 5 years down the road at a refresh, everything goes out. This is different now, because if you've got people outside of the office, you've got to move the product to them. But okay, that's at 3,000 different addresses, whatever the number is. If you're a company like Ford Motor Company, who said to 200,000 people, 30% are going to go permanent remote. It's not even your hybrid working group, right? That's 60,000 people.
Wow.
So outfitting that many people with all the products that they need, that's a large task. And then how do we keep track of it? Does everybody get this stuff permanently? Do they just get to retain it? Or is this stuff that's going to flow back in? What kind of inventory levels do we maintain for Shift to be able to take that, and the Shift Force to take that out, to continue to bring on new people as we recruit and attract new talent, and we bring in new people? We want to have a shift space showing up to them right away. So are we keeping a certain number of units and shift spaces in inventory? So keeping tabs on what's out there is very important. Keeping tabs on what's in the warehouse, very important. What's in transit, a schedule of who's getting what and when, how long have they held those units. That's all part of our asset or inventory management.
Yeah, that's really a large task. I didn't even think about having to maintain all the different IT assets, whether it be maybe individual companies have their their own products that they want their employees to use, or maybe you've got a set of off-the-shelf type items that you could, move out quickly and get people up and running. So that's definitely going to be a lot to track out there in the field, and to make sure that all the data is wiped when they come back and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, some companies are going to have when we put together their Shiftspaces, they're going to be customized. Some companies are going to want the curated version, and it's going to depend. You have some folks that have larger ITAV teams, and they want to be able to really run everything through those groups and say, hey, let's pick those standards out. Or we've already done it, and we want someone to help facilitate all this. On the other side of it, you have some companies that may want to say, hey, we're looking to you as the thought leaders here, as the experts who know what technology goes together. And so we're just going to buy those standard Shiftspaces for our people. So it's going to be a mixture of those being curated and those being custom.
Well, it looks like this is really a timely offering from your company, and the fact that, like you said, some of these very large multinational companies are going to have huge numbers of people working from home. So it looks like there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity out there for you. Tell us a little bit about, you kind of touched on maybe the classroom environment. Are you kind of working on some package for that aspect?
Yes, and to your point about the large opportunity, it's interesting. Going into that time, I myself hadn't worked remote. But I remember, growing up as going back to maybe 6-8 years old, and thinking about the different environments that I lived in and at different places. When we were in that spot of, okay, I'm shutting my office door, my kids are not home from school, my wife's doing her best to manage them, there's a lot of noise in the background, there's constant running around, the kids coming banging at the door. And I was fortunate at that time that I could close a door to an office. Right? But I remember what it was like when I was, it was myself, my siblings, there was 3 of us, and my 2 parents, and 5 of us lived in 1 bedroom of a home for 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just look back at that time, and it's like, well, I can relate to what it was like to be in a tight environment. And I remember what that was like to be in a space where it's like, hey, we don't have a lot of room, right? How would we make this work? And I remember talking to a sibling, and their family, they've got 4 kids at home. How do we do this? How do we manage 4 kids learning, remote like we're doing? And so one of the things that we acknowledged was that, first of all, giving a dedicated working space. Like, what is a space that's going to work for you? For those parents who are choosing today to keep their kids home for any number of reasons, it could be health reasons. It could be that there's additional conveniences that were never afforded before around these virtual programs. You think of, I've heard of Stride, which I believe was previously K12.com, and they were running pre-COVID for quite some number of years, and I believe that they were around 1 million students at that time before COVID even hit. Well, there's a large population of people we probably never thought of that have chosen for their kids to go online and remote learning all the time. And I knew of friends who were traveling with kids, and they would keep them remote while they were traveling. So anyway, kind of just linking these 2 thoughts here. The reality of our own children being at home, and they're just young kids running around, busy, trying to get work done. These were some of the things that really fueled that vision for Shiftspaces. And when I first showed our sons the shift walls, and they got a chance to look at them, the first question, of course, is, Dad, when do we get it? Which is what you expect in some ways from the kids. But one is, within that was a reception and a receptivity to this idea. We want to have what you're designing. And so I love to see that from our kids, and I've since shown it to nieces and nephews and friends of friends, and allowed them to get a chance to look at it, to get their responses, because the objective isn't to make this move and say, hey, we're here to move kids out of the classroom. How do we best support those that are not in a classroom environment? And this isn't just thinking specifically about K-12. This is universities, graduate school programs, any level of schooling, any type of adult learning, online learning. We want to create environments that are going to be culturally engaging, that are going to be representative of the not just the culture, but the company itself. And what kind of things do we use when we think about whether it's this university or that university? If you talk to people about the culture at one university, and I'm not naming any specifically, but they're going to say it's different from the north to the south or the east to the west, and there are expectations about what life is like within these cultures and on these campuses, and how do we take that and recreate those things within the home? And that's one of the things that we've been answering as we've been preparing to release Shiftspaces out into the world.
Now, I was thinking too that when you showed me the products, that you've got different packages that can go on the exterior walls, right? That like you can have maybe the logo of the company on one side, and then it could possibly flip and then be like a painting or something, right?
Yeah, so our focus with the walls is to be engaging both sides, right, with both sides. So what we refer to as the shift side, that's everything facing the camera. What we refer to as the life side is everything facing the living space. And so you can think unilaterally, or you can think specifically about, well, just what the camera is seeing, what the person on the other side of the camera is seeing. That's important. But we also remember that if we're putting a shift space into someone's home, we want to be thoughtful about everyone else that's there. And we want to bring something into that space that's going to be meaningful for that person, that's going to represent maybe the family, maybe that individual, maybe something that's important to them. Now, for some people, that could be something entertainment-based, a musician or artist. For some people, it could be a painting. We actually have a local artist here who we asked to be our first artist for the company. And so Arturo Samaniego is the one that we began working with him about 10 months ago to collaborate on this. And so what you'll see released on the life side, one of the parts is that one of the choices is from Arturo's line of art.
So it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because if you see these three paintings, I painted those with him in his classes. So
yes, and he's a good friend, and he's an excellent artist, and the world will get to see, and that's what we love to do, is be able to expose some of his work to the world that we're engaging with. But they're beautiful works of art, and we want people to have something in their home that they're proud of. It's too often, we're here where we are in Naples, Florida, and we're thinking about things with a perspective that might be very limited, right? And even as leaders, this is an encouragement to leaders out there, are thinking from how this whole thing has been received by your people that you're leading and serving. It's being received in such a way, well, okay, people can move home and maybe there's freedom in it. And there are a lot of truths to the freedom and flexibility that's absolutely there. But recognize too that where people are living at, we've got to think about their space and help acknowledging that it may not be 2,500 square foot home that's got an extra room in it, maybe even two. If you have, if myself and my wife are both working in the home at the same time, do we have two home offices we're working from? And this is where Shiftspaces really become central in this conversation, because we can actually build out this space, modifying any room in our home or our studio, our apartment, our mobile home, whatever we have, right, in order to accommodate for all of our work, products, technology, those types of things, in a way that's going to work for our families or for us individually. So again, that point of just thinking from not just our own lens, but think about the people. And I could draw from my early childhood and say, I remember what it was like, 5 of us in one room. Wow. I remember those days well because I lived them for many years. And I remember coming out of that and the different experiences we had. I also worked with the Pontiac, Michigan school system and Detroit schools, our churches within the city of Detroit. And had many friends and people that we were engaged with. And outside of even just those cities, just friends that I grew up with, different types of homes. Not everybody has the same sort of space. So how do you create that equitable environment for people that is going to work when not everybody has the same space? And Shiftspaces allow us to create that consistent, fair and equitable environment that does work for everybody, everywhere.
And don't forget, the best way to support ITAD content is to rate and like the show on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or anywhere you might listen.
Welcome to ITAD Talk and part 2 in this series. Here is your host, Jeff Bittner.
All right. One of the things I wanted to touch on too, and I know that I heard you mention this, is as I've been talking to thought leaders and and people that have built their businesses and things, they always seem to refer to mentoring that they've been mentored, and also the work that maybe how they're touching lives of others. And I was just wondering if you might touch on that a little bit, because I know you mentioned that you had a mentor, and like what kind of an impact that had on you, and perhaps how you've been able to pass that on as well.
That's a great question. And, what I've found throughout the years is there have been specific people that have come into my life, and I'm very thankful for those introductions. I look at those intersections where those people came into my life, and whether it was for 2 years or for 2 months, sometimes much longer term, that I was so fortunate and very thankful that God would put those people in my life. And so certainly I can point first to my own father, my earthly father. I say, okay, Mark Fencil, he's a wonderful man, a guy that I greatly love and deeply respect. And he's the one who was pouring into my life since I was a kid, and still does to this day. And I'm very thankful for him. And then I would say, over the last 13 years, I was introduced to a man out of in Michigan by the name of Lauren, who at that time was in his late 70s. And he's just past 90.
Oh, wow.
I just spent his 90th birthday with him and family and friends, and he has just been such a source of encouragement and inspiration, and just pointing me to put my life in God's hands, and to rest in knowing He has a plan for me, and to trust God with my life. And so it's been, it's been awesome walking with him. He's the kind of guy I can call up, and it could be 9 o'clock at night, or it could be 7 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Hey, Michael," and we get on the phone for whatever time, and he's just giving me an ear. And he's a person, I think one of the greatest things he's taught me about is doing things for others without any expectation of return. And
it's powerful.
That's how he operates. And he just has a heart to love and serve. And that's what he does. He's made a huge impression on my life with that. And I believe that is what we're called to. And even as we think about the company, that has turned into, the core focus of this is, if you have a heart to serve, you can lead. And we're here to serve people. We have a desire to equip people with physical goods, tangible things that are very practical, that make sure that they can do their work, but ultimately we care about those people right where they are. We want to protect people. And I say that in a multitude of different ways. Even giving people more confidence to work from home, because they've got a shift wall behind them, and it's representing the brand of the company. That could do a world of difference for people when they get on the camera, because they say, "Hey, you don't see my environment, you don't see where I'm working." Not that maybe it's not bad. Maybe I like it. I'm unsure. Right? I'm unsure, and I don't really want to be judged by that. And I think for companies on this other side of that is, companies they shouldn't want people to be judged based on their personal environments. It should be saying something that's reflective of the company. So from a company standpoint, corporate standpoint, or from a governmental standpoint, to be able to issue things within the living spaces of your people that help people on the other side of the camera identify that, oh, you're with this company, oh, they're with that agency. There's a lot that goes on psychologically for that person. It ties them to that company, but it gives them some incredible encouragement.
Well, yeah, and too, I was just thinking too, one of the things that your Shiftspaces will do is it'll give a continuity for that company. So it's kind of like if you go to a McDonald's, you expect the same, clean environment and pleasant people and so on. So when you're using your products, and they'll be seen on like the Zoom video or whatever platform they're using, they're going to see maybe the same logo in the background, and maybe the desk layout and so on. So there's going to be a lot of continuity for that. That's
right, Jeff. You would want and expect to see that if we contact someone at a local office, and we contact someone at an office, let's say 100 miles away, and we're doing it by way of the virtual meet, Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, whatever that is. when you can do it in a way that is repeatable and consistent, we should see a similar environment for all those. And that environment should be representative of the company or the agency or the school. And that continuity helps in a lot of ways. It helps me distinguish you from just anybody else I'm talking to on the phone. I know, oh, you're part of that company. You guys are, you're connected. And I think that's one thing to talk about it externally, meaning our conversations with people who are talking about us, who we're talking with, is whether they're partners or they're potential clients or current clients of the company. But we could also think about it like, when it comes to the internal engagements. So what that's like for you and I, or for you and your team. Let's say if everybody's branded the same way, I liken it to, you could walk down a street in Naples here, I could, and anywhere I went, if I saw someone with a University of Michigan shirt on, or a University of Michigan hat, or an Evangel University one, I was at both schools and I'm alumni of both. If I see that, there's an immediate connection, especially if I had the same shirt on as well, or something representing that, not the exact same one. But if we see that logo, there's a connection between the two of us. Hey, we both went to that school, right? So there's something that's there. In the same way, I think we want to do that internally for companies and schools and agencies. Say, hey, we're all connected, right? Even though we're disbanded, even though our offices are decentralized, we can still be connected.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think that that's a really important factor, and you've brought up a lot of really good points as far as the advantages of using Shiftspace and the continuity and the separating the space between work and home life, and also they kind of can give you some quiet time to function while you're doing your work, and have a little bit of soundproofing. So all those things are really important, and I mean also having the continuity in the same type of products throughout, so that one company can know that they've got a certain technology that's going to be scaled through all these different office space setups in people's homes. So is there anything that you think we haven't covered, or anything else that you wanted to add?
That's a good question. I think your questions have been great and really opened the door for people to understand more about what we're doing. Thank you
Sure.
you just for sharing this time inside the office. And whether I said it at the beginning or the end of the conversation, it's really great to be here with you and to be able to shed some light on what we're doing and how we're approaching the market right now. I would say that when we think about leaders today, oftentimes there is a question of the what, right? We went past the COVID came. Right, and it hasn't gone. We're now in Delta variant, and whether there's another one behind that, and I know there are several, Lambda and Mu, and these variants. We don't know how
they're going to impact us.
How they're going to impact us, and what that means for the office space, and what that means for other things in life, in schools. And there are questions about masks in schools, and there are vaccination issues. There are a lot of different issues that are swirling right now and being talked about. And one of the things that's interesting, what we found within this is it's a key way to not only serve the people, but also serve leadership. You're dealing with so many different issues at a leadership level today. It would have been one thing to deal with COVID alone if we just isolated that. But there's so many things on the table right now that you're contending with as a leader. And so our ability to create this standardized system, right, and say, hey, we can do this for you, and we can do it in a way that's professional, it's systematized, it's consistent, it's a standard that works for everybody, and it really works well, and we can manage that for you. It's like, okay, you get to insert Shiftspaces right here, right, in this gap that you have. So as I was saying a moment ago, you had what are we dealing with, right, this whole thing, COVID, and then the question about remote work. Okay, now are we going to ask people to come back? Do we like how this is working? There's this big sea change of the way we work. And I say one of the next cultural issues, right, is people saying, no, I don't want to come back. Now that's already starting to happen in some capacity.
But I was just thinking that a point that you kind of touched on is that some people, some people want everybody to wear a mask. Some people don't want to wear a mask. Then you've got people that think everybody should be vaccinated, and then there's those that, for whatever reason, don't want to get a vaccination. So I was just thinking that, for those that are working at home, that kind of alleviates a couple of those issues, because they're not going to be in the office. Right. They're not going to be around those people, so they're not going to be that kind of pressure. Because I was talking to a woman that works at one of the hospitals here in Naples, and she does not want to get vaccinated, and but they're trying to force her to get vaccinated. So it seems to be kind of an issue kind of going on, and that's one thing through Shiftspaces that would, with people working at home, that they wouldn't have to deal with those issues, at least from a corporate standpoint or going into an office building, let's say.
That's right. I remember very early on in March of last year when we started talking about this, I was casting this vision, and the thought was, gosh, people are going to want to, everybody's trying to get back. I said, let's not try to rebuild what we already built. Let's build what's new, and let's build better. Let's build in a way that,
build it better.
And on and on. and so here we are, and now so many of these things that have come to light, like the vaccination issues, and I call them issues because they're real. People are being affected by these things, and they're having to make decisions that affect their health, that affect their psychological, their well-being, emotional well-being. You have different pressures that are at work, and different pressures that are at work, meaning different things that are affecting people on the job, and they're having to make decisions perhaps before they never thought about having to make. And so when we think about this, the opportunity to implement Shiftspaces, in doing this, you have another plan for people. This group of people, for whatever reason, whether it's health-related, religious exemptions, any other thing, they just simply don't want to. But they have the reasons, and they're not going to come back in the office on account of the vaccination. We have the way to support them. And by the way, we can create more flexibility for our people, even those who do want to be vaccinated or aren't concerned about health issues and would want to go back in the office. We also have something for them too in rolling out Shiftspaces to our people. So you're right; it offers people something so that if they're not willing to do that, then hey, we've got a plan for you too. We've got options for you too. We're not just going to rid ourselves of you, but we're going to give you a different avenue to continue to stay connected and be a part of this workforce.
It's kind of funny too. I wanted to add one other thing that you were talking about is that so when people are working from home, I think that when that first started, a lot of companies were kind of stressed about, hey, is the productivity there? Are they going to be working at home? Are they going to be doing yard work or just things like that? But it's kind of funny because we're using one of the platforms to get remote workers to help with digital products and things like that, and they actually have an option through that platform that shows a screen share. It shows the screen of the person that's working, and so it's just kind of interesting how things are changing now. And I mean, like maybe in the past you would have had a lot, maybe more freedom, but now things if so I guess what I'm saying, if there is a thought that might be happening, there's tools to make sure that the productivity is still there.
That's right. That's increased over the last year and a half, and certainly some of those things existed beforehand, but they just brought into the light now because those same tools, maybe that could have been used for something else very similar, now have a secondary use, or that principal use is now just needed to a much greater extent. And that's one of the things that many were concerned about early on, is worker productivity and efficiencies and all these things. And that was actually, the statistics show, and depending on which study you're reading and who you're talking to, I'm certain there are nuances. We've seen them, but that on high balance, people are working really well outside of an office, somewhere within their home, in terms of at least their productivity.
It's kind of funny because I remember when, this is probably like 20 years ago, but when I was working from home as I was starting to grow my business, and I would be up at like 7 o'clock in the morning and checking online orders, and it almost seems like a lot of times when you work from home, you actually work harder because you're checking on things more often. And when you get up, you can check on something, or it just gives you a lot more flexibility and the ability to closely monitor things going on.
Certainly, you'll hear about people that say, I work more hours than I used to at the office. And some of that might be, we've all of a sudden gained back margin and in schedules. If you're in California, if you're in Austin, Texas, if you're in, traveling in and out from New Jersey to New York, and your commute in a day might be several hours, that's a lot of time that now becomes productive time. It might be leisure time that you can add to. It might be more time with your family. People are going to have different things that they're going to use that time for. But certainly over the last year and a half, you've heard a lot of people saying, I've regained a lot of time. My priorities have shifted a bit. I've got more time with my family. I've got time for myself. I'm making different decisions that I think are leading to a better quality of life for me. And I think that's, while it may not be true of everybody, I think I've heard a lot of that at least because you're now missing these commute times. That's just one piece of it. On the other side of it, you hear people say, well, I'm working longer hours, right? I'm having a harder time maybe disconnecting. And part of having a shift space is that you do have this dedicated space. So if my working space is my couch in the living room, and that's also my place to relax, it gets a little bit murky about where I'm at.
Or if that's your family space to relax and
That's
you're
right.
out there working and you want a quiet environment. I was thinking too, like you were talking about, that there's going to be a huge cost savings too for the individual that's working from home, because maybe now he doesn't have to invest as much in business clothing, for example. Going into the office all the time, plus the wear and tear on their vehicles, gasoline, and some of these things. And like you said, they're being able to save time. And then, like, I think you were pointing out that, you're starting to do some of the work on the cost savings that it might cost a company to house a staff or personnel inside of an office building versus a shift space. Do you have any more to add on? Like, I know you're kind of starting to work out some of those cost structures on, like, how much does it cost to house an employee in a building? I mean, each year and so on.
Well, the average is the cost savings to an employer are around $11,500 a year. This study was, I want to say, about a year and a half to 2 years ago. For the employee, it was about a $4,400 savings annually to work from home. So you got a really large savings on both sides for both parties. And collectively, there's a significant win-win that's there, right? And so the cost of having people in an office, the real estate costs, depending on where you're at, can be much higher in some areas. The cost for a person traveling, if you're in one area versus another, is going to be significantly different. But those, I believe, are the national averages of savings.
So really, then buying a shift space would pay out pretty fast, and then year over year, you're going to get the multiple of that money back to the corporation.
That's right.
Or from an employee standpoint, or a staff member, they might be able to take some of that savings and invest more, maybe in their 401k or IRA, or to plan better for retirement. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So.
Absolutely, and I think that we have. We had somebody who we were talking to recently, a large corporation. They said, this isn't just a way for us to, we've said so far we're going to do this. We're going to allow our people to go remote. This is a way for us to memorialize that. So as a company to say, hey, we're going to put this down inside the house. We're going to invest in you, our people. It's not just our words. It's our money as well as a company. And we're going to do this in a way that makes sense for the company. It's going to make sense for the people. It's going to be something that everybody can participate in. And it's going to allow for that flexibility that people are asking for today, and that companies are saying, hey, we're willing to give you.
Yeah, it's just really funny how much things have changed so much in the past year and a half to where companies are so open now to people working from home, because in the past they would have thought, no, we're just not going to do that. This is the way we've always done things. And now companies have just had to react so quickly and scale very, very fast as well.
Yeah, and earlier, Jeff, I had mentioned the thought about COVID coming up. That was hey, how do we react to this? And really, we want to respond, and we want to respond intelligently and use wisdom and discernment about things. And there are moments, though, you say, we had to move people out. We didn't really have much of a choice, a huge amount of time to prepare for this. So people went home, and I likened it to this: if you were in a wilderness and somebody said, hey, you have a Swiss Army knife and a canteen of water, and you got to stay through the weekend. And it was unexpected, a car broke down or something, right? Some sort of odd occurrence. And so all you have is, this is what you got. Okay, but then if somebody says, hey, you're going to be out there in the wilderness for a year and a half, the Swiss Army knife and the canteen isn't going to be enough. You'd want to make sure that you packed for that. And because we've moved from like, okay, I got thrust into this position, to now we're doing this in a planful way. We're expected to be in this space, right? So because we're expected that now people are going to be moving and working remote, moving from the office, staying remote, however that is, or even a hybrid between the two, we're answering that how. Shiftspaces, this is how the world works. Providing people with everything that they need and doing it in a way that is very thoughtful.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for being our guest this morning. And so our guest has been Michael Fencil from Shiftspaces, and he has a great company that he's building here, and it seems to be at the forefront of where corporate America is at, and from the work at home movement. So we'll look forward to seeing how your company grows. I'm sure it's just going to explode here soon. So,
well, thank you, Jeff. It's been very nice.
And don't forget, the best way to support ITAD content is to rate and like the show on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or anywhere you might listen.